Hello, and welcome to another episode of Ask a Pharmacy Leader with Fisayo. Now, this next question is, how did you study for the BCPS exam in only 6 weeks? How do you study for the BCPS exam? For those that aren't aware, the BCPS is the Board Certification in Pharmacotherapy Specialist examination that most clinical pharmacists acquire. It's more broad. It's kind of an umbrella certification, much broader than the others, which are more specified, like geriatrics, infectious disease, oncology, BCOP, things like that. So because of that, it's very extensive. It covers a lot of material. I haven't taken any of the other ones, and so I can't compare it to the other ones, but I can tell you that it covers just a ton of material from pretty much all the other ones. Everything from cardio, ID, HIV, oncology, statistics, pretty much everything. It's kind of a general certification. And so I took this test I was actually studying for this test maybe about 3 years ago, almost to the date. In order to take the test, you need to, at least back then, I don't know if the requirements have changed now, you needed to have 3 years of clinical experience, however that was defined. And so I took the test, I sat for the test, I studied. Thank God I passed. Now, a lot of people say that you need to study 2 to 3 months for this exam in order to be really prepared to take this exam. That's not wrong. That is true in most circumstances, I would imagine. I did not take that time. I did it in about 6 weeks. However, I will put this disclaimer out there. I probably had more time, just in general, than probably most other people who would be studying for this exam. Let me explain. At the time, I was working 7 on, 7 off. And so I had a block of a whole week where I could do nothing but study. And even when I was working my 7 on, whenever there was a little bit of downtime at work, I had my laptop with me, and I would just be studying, going through notes or whatever. And so I definitely feel like I had more time to study than maybe people who are married and have children to take care of as well as work, or people that are working 5 days a week instead of 7 on, 7 off. And so I took advantage of that, and I preface this by saying that was the circumstance that, really allowed me to take this exam, study in a short amount of time, 6 weeks, and yet passed. I don't recommend you do that if you don't have the amount of time. I feel like I still put in the same amount of time that someone else would have put in over that 2 to 3 months of studying, just because I did it concentrated in 6 weeks, if that makes sense. Secondly, getting to the actual how do you study. Again, remember, there's a lot of material. So something that I found out while I was studying was, I think there's something like 15 to maybe 20 chapters. Oh, and what did I use? What study material did I use? I used ACCP material, which most people are familiar with in my experience. Most people know about ACCP. It's very extensive. I feel it leaves nothing uncovered. The material includes things like videos, MP3 audio, PDFs, slides. It was very well packaged, very well packaged. Definitely worth using. I used that, and I think that material had something like over 15 different chapters or topics. Each of them were like at least an hour long on average. And so it was quite a bit of material to study and to cram. And they were detailed. They were very detailed. What I found out was I would study something and go on to the next chapters and the next chapters, and maybe come back a few days later and try to review what the first thing, and I couldn't remember. It was just so much material. That's the other thing. There's so much material to cover. And so instead of what I quickly learned to do to really feel like I wasn't going in circles and just spinning my wheels, is as I went along, I would make myself a 1-page sheet of notes for everything that I could put in for that chapter that I was studying. For example, if it was cardiology 1, because there were like 2 different cardiology chapters, I would do a sheet for cardiology 1 front and back, and get everything that I needed to get on that sheet that I felt was important. That way, whenever I needed to go back and review, I didn't have to go and rewatch the whole thing for an hour. I only needed to just quickly glance through that sheet for like 5 minutes and I'm good. That was my little tactic that I used, and I felt it was effective. And so I did that. The other thing was I focused on the bigger chapters or the bigger topics that, I knew were going to be big on the exam based on, some of the feedback that I had gotten from colleagues and friends that had taken the exam. Things like infectious disease, HIV, cardio, endocrinology was semi-big, things like that. I focused on those. I also focused on what everyone's going to tell you is that statistics, study design, those were big. Those non-clinical sections were huge on the exam. And so I spent, I think the last part of my studying was dedicated to just studying those. Mainly was when I covered those. And those are easy. And so I remember, I think I saw someone say you can get away with maybe not knowing cardiology or not knowing one specific topic. However, you can't not know statistics and think you're going to pass the exam. It doesn't work that way. And so I definitely make sure that I was able to nail those non-clinical topics and generally at least have a good idea or good grasp of the bigger clinical topics, like I had mentioned before: cardio, ID, HIV, things like that. I'm gonna be honest, there are some topics that I ran out of time. I didn't even have time to really go over them. Things like men and women's health, I didn't go over. And I'm not saying to do that. I do not recommend not going over everything. However, I didn't have enough time to really just go over everything. They did still show up on the exam, obviously. But at that point, it was just a gamble. But I felt it was better to utilize the time that I did have to study the things that I felt would be more so on the exam than something that you might only have 2-3 questions on. At least that was just how I approached it. What else did I do? Just study hard, be dedicated, don't procrastinate like I did, and work. Use the time you have, schedule the time you have into doing some good studying. Find out, you could use the tactic that I use, but find a way to really learn the material. And I feel like if you're able to do that, you're going to do well in the exam. Thanks for watching. I hope this helped those that are preparing for the exam. If you have a question that you want featured on the segment, or if you enjoyed this video, please leave a comment, subscribe, and we will see you next time. Thank you.